Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Shape Your Truth podcast, the podcast where we dive into topics that really matter. And I'm your host, Dr. Kamika, and today we're going to talk about something that is both empowering and a little bit controversial. And what it means to be the main character in your own life. Now, you might be thinking, how can being the main character be controversial? Well, that's what we're going to explore today. And to help us unpack this, we have a very special guest, Vitelle um, Webb, joining us today. So, welcome, Vitelle.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Hello, everyone.
So, why are we diving into this idea of being the main character? Because sometimes we're all facing whether we want to realize it or not, we're all led by our own life story. But how we play that role can have a big impact on our happiness, our relationships, and our sense of purpose. But here's the thing. Sometimes stepping into that lead role can clash with other people's expectation of us. So, Vitelle, why do you think it's important for people to see themselves as the main character in their own lives?
Ooh, so interesting of a question. And coming from someone who's actually an actress in real life, I often play the main character. And I did have to find a perspective to where in my real life, not on set, I had to become that main character. I had to see myself as that main character. When you think about the main character in a movie, you're thinking about the person that, in most cases, nothing can really touch them. Life's going to happen to them, but they're going to come out on top in the end. They're the main character, right? So you expect it. And so seeing myself as the main character is like, I have to look at my life that way too. As someone who's overcome a lot of trauma, I've had to look at it like, like almost like nothing can really touch me. We know that life is going to happen to us, but at the end, we're going to come out victorious if we just realize like we're the main character. We're the star of our own show in our own life. We have to make the decisions that drive the story, and the story is going to end up where we allow it to end up based on the decisions that we make. So seeing yourself as the main character is important. It puts you in a position of authority, I guess, in your life, and just taking charge of not letting things happen into you. Things happen for me now at this point in my life. So I don't allow things to happen to me anymore. When something is happening that I don't like, I look at it like, okay, why is this happening? What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? Because when you think about the main character in the movie, that's what they're doing. They're learning, they're growing throughout the movie. No matter what bad thing happens, it's teaching them a lesson and they're growing from it. So we are the main character of our own lives.
Yeah. So being a main character means making choices that reflect who you are and not letting others dictate your path. Is what I hear you saying. And that makes a lot of sense. But let's break it down a little bit more so we can understand the main character mindset. When we talk about being a main character, what does that actually look like in our everyday life? I mean, can you share a story when you realized you had to take control of your own story?
Well, I mean, it goes back to what I was saying. Like, I'm trying to think of a specific scenario because, as I mentioned, I've been through a lot of traumatic experiences in my life, even from childhood and going into adulthood. So, a lot of times when you go through trauma, a lot of times it is based on what someone else is doing or decisions that they're making or what they're doing to you. A lot of times you can become a victim and see it as, this person's doing this to me. So you have to, as the main character, I guess I might need you to reiterate the question a little bit for me because I don't want to get too far off topic.
It's okay. You could get off. You can go get off as you want.
I'm trying to think of a specific scenario.
Just tell us a little bit more about yourself then. And tell us about when you had to do that main character thing, when you had to let people know
Right.
that you are taking charge, you are, or instance, maybe you had to talk with your dad or your mom or something and let them know, or family member, or husband or something, I need to take
So
control of my life this
I
time.
think why it's so difficult for me to think of a specific scenario is because it's happened so many times. Like when I
Mhm.
talk about healing from trauma, I talk about that it's a process. It's not something that you just wake up one day, you say, that's it, I'm taking charge, I'm healed,
Mhm.
period,
Mhm.
the end. So when I'm even in the scenario that you're talking about, thinking of specific scenarios, there were so many times where I had to take charge in a situation. And okay, I guess we'll talk specifically. Let's talk about my mother. Okay. I like talk about my mama too much. I love my mama, but let's talk about, the upbringing. It was a situation where I did have to take charge, and I did have to say, you know what, this is my life, my decisions, and not be so controlled. Dealing with that type of upbringing and that controlling environment. So I guess that would be one of the scenarios. And then even coming from that type of childhood, going into marriage and building relationships and friendships as an adult, even teachers and things in college and stuff like that, like just not being pushed around. Um,
Mhm.
I was a very kind person, I guess. So I could be kind of a pushover, I guess. And so just, taking charge in all aspects and scenarios, and not allowing someone else to put their wishes and will on you. Like a lot of people probably can relate to when as you're being raised, your parents want you to be a certain thing or do a certain thing. They want you to be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever they want for you. And then you might have this different passion inside of you, this different drive. I know I did. As an actress now, nobody wanted me to be an actress. No one in my family wanted me to do that. That's not a real job in their mind. They're like, you need to get a job. You need to do this. You need to do that. Like I had to take charge of my own destiny as the main character in my story and understand this is what works for me. And I think the thing that really helped shift that for me, again, it was a process over years. I went through that process, and then I found myself in yet another predicament where someone else is placing their burdens on me, right? So I had to learn how to do it and practice it over and over again. But most recently, having deaths in the family
Oh
will
yeah.
really,
Mhm.
really change your whole mindset on everything. And then
Mhm.
it causes you to start to think about the end. The fact of the matter is, we're all going to go at some point. And
Yes.
so when I leave this earth, I have to answer for me. I have to look back and reflect on my own life. Nobody is in my mind reflecting on it for me. And so, as the main character in your story, you make those decisions, you live your life. Even if everyone else has an opinion about it, you can't let that, you can't just make your decision based off of that, because they're not going to be there with you at the end. Even if they're standing right beside you when you take your last breath, you're still the only one that knows everything about your life that's going on in here.
Right.
And so and you have to answer to God on your own. So that's so important. That was really a clicking moment for me, just experiencing death close to home.
Yeah, and even like you were saying, you want to pick your own path. They want you to do something, you want to do something else. And
Right.
even when you do what they want you to do, you have to answer to yourself that you're not doing what you want to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I totally went the path that everybody wants you to go, and then wake up 20 years later unfulfilled. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's
Right.
definitely true. Everything you said, and that was very powerful.
Yeah.
But when you made that choice
Mhm.
and you did whatever that was that went against their expectation, did
Mhm.
you feel selfish in your need to balance your own need with their expectation?
That's a good question, because okay, so being a very much of a people pleaser that I was,
Mhm.
and I speak in past tense, even though I still have my moments sometimes. I want people to be happy, right? So
Mhm.
being that much of a people pleaser, there was this in the back of my mind that felt like, you don't want to let them down, especially when it comes to your family. You don't want to let them down. You want to make grandma proud. You want to make mom proud. You want to, you're gonna have that, but at the end of the day, you have to like really, I guess, weigh the pros and cons. You have to just write it out sometimes and really put it on paper and make it plain that, okay, this makes the most sense in order for me to be happy and successful, because not only am I going to get to the end of my road one day, they're going to get to the end of their road. And then what they have, like, they controlled your whole life up to this point, and then they're gone. And now you're left with this life that was theirs and not your own. So, you know, it's a pros and cons. You might have that feeling a little bit. I might have had that feeling a little bit, but I had to push that feeling to the side and say, you know what? This is more important. It's more important that I am fulfilled and that I follow what's in my heart to do, what God's purposed me on this earth to do. So that's more important. So one has to outweigh the other. So it's not like you're going to not feel that at all, but you have to understand that this is more important, and you have to be able to push that that feeling to the side.
Yeah. So you have to be more self-aware, right? And just like comical, like a little laugh. Who gave you the most pushback?
Right.
Was it your mom, your grandma, when you said, "Look, I'm gonna go do this acting thing"? Who gave you the most pushback?
Oh gosh. Okay, so that would be probably my grandpa. He had the most to say about you need to get a job, you need to do this, you need to do that. You know, that's probably my grandfather. May he rest in peace. He definitely but he's old school, and I had to also look at it like this, and hopefully this is for somebody. I just felt that I have to share this part of that story. So my grandfather's no longer with us, and I realized, like, rather than taking it personally that he doesn't want me to follow my dreams, he doesn't want me to accomplish this, I had to realize that he had his own traumas. I'm feeling pulled to follow a path that is sharing my testimony to help people to heal from trauma. And while I'm doing that and learning myself and growing myself, I'm realizing that the people who seem to be trying to hold me back right now, it's because they have dealt with their own traumas. And you got to think about, when you're talking about your grandparents, they came from a different day and time. Yeah. And so sometimes we say they have a slave mentality. They came from that time period where you weren't allowed to do anything. Like, so why would he think now, even though he's in a completely, you know, he's in the 21st century now, what would change his mindset to think any differently than this is what we have to do? We go to school, we learn these things, we work for someone, we die, the end. Like, that was the mindset. And so when I realized that, like, this is not his fault, like, trauma is the problem. So therefore, you know, that helped me in realizing, like, there's no person that's my problem, it's the problem that's the problem. And so in moving forward in my journey and tackling dealing with trauma and recognizing that as the problem, like, I don't have any enemies. My enemies are dealing with the same problem, and that's trauma. So we got to focus on that part of it, you know.
And get past all of that noise so that you can focus on your journey. Exactly. So they're going to talk about, going to our second point, the tricky balance between confidence and narcissism. So it's like a lot of buzz, this main character syndrome, I guess you say. And you know, when somebody is focused on their own thing that they got on going on, and they forget about everybody else. What's your take on that?
Man, you're going to get me off on a tangent. I can just already tell, but I'm going to try to pull it back. I'm trying to hold it back. Okay. So, for me, as someone growing up, I did not have self-confidence, like, at all. Confidence was completely shot. A lot of people know my story. I talk about colorism and being a Black woman in the skin I'm in. That was not fun growing up. I went from going to an all Black school where I was too bright. I was light bright, I was Rudolph, I was Casper, I was all of them. And then went to a majority white school my last 2 years of high school, and just getting a complete culture shock where there I was too Black. I was the N-words, I was all that. And there was no in between. So for me, growing up in that, you know, my self-esteem was just like, I don't care how pretty you are, you just, you know, it got so bad to a point I wanted to cut my face up at one point just so people wouldn't judge me off my face. Like, Of course, that would be counteractive, but counterproductive. But like that's how just to put into perspective how bad my self-esteem was and my thought process at that time. So I had to work really hard to get to where I am now, where I'm able to be on a big screen and model and act and doing all these things that I'm doing now. Like I had to purposely work extra hard to get myself as the main character in my story to the point that I know how great I am, how beautiful I am, all of these positive things that we tell ourselves. And even in growing through that process, that was so hard because you got people that feel like you think you're all that, right? Like you got you're a beautiful person. Let's just face it. You have people that feel like you think you're all that. And they didn't realize the self-esteem issues that I was actually dealing with behind the scenes. So that crushes you even more when you're trying to build your self-esteem and you're trying to tell yourself that I think I'm beautiful, I think I'm this, I think I'm that. And they're telling you that's the wrong thing to do. Like you shouldn't think you're all that. Like what? So I had to work even harder now to counteract that part of it. So it was like I really had to, you know how they say you shoot for the moon or aim for the moon, you might land amongst the stars kind of thing. Yeah, so I really did have to aim really high, almost to the point of conceited or narcissist, as you say, to get myself high enough to not be having this low self-esteem anymore. So it is a thin line. And some people like do come across, like I see people with confidence all the time and I love it. I love to see it. And you think, you know, that they're so confident. I wish I had that kind of confidence. Like it's admirable when someone is confident, but when someone is just arrogant or just a narcissist, like that, it feels different when you see it. It feels nasty. It feels like, oh, that's not cute. You know, like, and it just has a different effect. So I think it's more about like the energy that you're giving to other people. You can pump yourself up all day long in the mirror by yourself, but when you go out and present yourself to the world, how are you coming across to them? You put yourself up, but are you putting yourself above everyone else? Do you think you're better than all of them? Do you know, and when you get to the point where you know that's not true, then you don't care when other people say, oh, she thinks she's all this, because you know that's not true. Like, you know how hard you had to work to get to this point of self-confidence. So you just start ignoring those things. Like those things don't get to you anymore. If somebody calls you ugly, it's like, really? Where? You know, like you know, you don't let that bother you anymore. But at the same time, like if you're putting someone else down in the process, that's when it becomes crossing over into the other line of narcissism, of arrogance and things like that. Because like we shouldn't have to put someone else's down. We don't know what they're going through with their self-esteem, how hard they're having to work to get to where they need to be, you know. And so to put someone else down to get yourself there, that's definitely the antagonist of the story at that point.
Right. And it's like you are a main character, but you are not the only character. You know what I mean? There's other people starring in their own movie, right? So
right, exactly.
I can relate a lot to what you're saying about the colorism and things. In my family, I'm not the light. Isn't like they're like your complexion. Most of my aunts, my ugly. But when I go, so I was never considered the light bright, right? But when I went in other communities where people were a little darker than me, and they're like, "Oh, the light skinned one," and I'm like, "Who's the light skinned one?"
Right, right.
We're the light skinned one. I'm like, wait, why? How am I the light skinned one? But people's perception of what is what they feel like you're better or worse or good is you know, it's varying, you know. And I don't know where this low confidence about skin color started or where it's ever going to end, but it's a real thing. It's such a real thing. And then to top that off with being overweight and having to deal with those kind of am I good enough, or people going to like me, or everything all your whole life is wrapped around your weight. You know what I mean? And how people perceive you, if you going to be a part or not.
Right.
And to have to lose weight. And now people switch it over to, oh, you think you better because
right. You have no idea how it works.
you are because you lost weight, kind of thing like that. So it was a whole culture shock to have to go from another community where
Right.
you're not maybe the lightest one, then go to
Mhm.
you're lighter than everybody, and
Right.
then you go to from being super heavy to losing weight.
Mhm.
There was two instances in my life where I'm like, where does this go? I can't win either way. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Trust.
Totally identify with what you're saying in that sense.
Mhm.
And I can say the weight part, it still happens. Like I totally identify still with being a plus size woman. But when I know people see me, they don't see a plus size woman.
Wow.
So
I would have never thought that. That's
yeah, so I'm like, I'm one of you, but they're like, sometimes they're like, no, you're not. You know what I mean? So
hmm
stand with that, and not feeling like that remembering their struggle instead of saying like I did it, so you should be able to too.
right.
Come,
Mhm.
come to that where they're ready to make that change. So that was I really like what you just said right there. It brought out a lot of um, things in my mind of how that crossover was very hard to fight against and to get arrogant and not being stuck up about being small now and things like that, or now I have a different type of attraction or get a different type of attention. So I think that was really important.
When you're talking about that, it makes me think of another another great example. So you know how you get people who like just became Christian. We call them baby
Mhm.
Christians,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
have to be like extra extra holy and everything
yeah.
out their
Hmm.
mouth. You can't
Hmm.
even ask them how they do. Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. You know, they got
Yeah,
to be extra
true.
extra. So it's like it reminds me of that example as well, because I know so many people like that, and I just like it almost is offensive sometimes
Hmm.
when they're too much, because it's like they're aggressive with it. You can
Hmm.
say.
Yeah,
And so
yeah,
you're kind of just like taken aback, like, well, dang, I'm saved too. Like, excuse me, like I ain't as saved as you are, like, and
oh,
so
yeah.
it can come across as arrogance in that situation as well. But you have to understand, in their mind, like they just got here. Or they
Right.
might have been dealing with something crazy on the other side
Mhm.
that got them to this point, and now they have to work extra hard, be extra saved, in
Yeah.
order to stop from falling back into what they were doing before. So it's like you kind of can understand to an extent,
Hmm.
but at the same
Hmm.
time, it's about how you're coming across to someone else. That's the most important part.
Right. Yeah. And being accused of having that character, main character syndrome, it can be hurtful too, especially when you know you're not doing that, or that's not the
You don't
uh,
intend to.
yeah, that's what that's not the energy you're trying to put out, or you don't want to hurt somebody. How
Right.
have you handled that? Have you ever experienced that where you know that that's not my intent, but this is what's there about you? Hmm.
Yeah, and even that even pushed me back to, it was like I was taking 10 steps forward and 5 steps back every time I did feel that, because if somebody's saying you think you're better than everybody else, and I'm like, I don't want people to think that. I better lower myself so that they don't think that. Like, oh gosh, I know that feeling all too well, and I hate that. And I had to, it was definitely a lot of work to learn how to not sink back down to that. And again, it was about understanding where they're coming from, because if they see that in you and they're misunderstanding you that badly, and like you've checked yourself, you're not doing anything to come across that way. Like sometimes it's a matter of checking yourself, and maybe I am doing something to come across that way. Maybe I can change this, or the way I'm saying this, or whatever. But if you've checked yourself and you've corrected that, and there's nothing, I'm not trying to come across that way, then you have to question, okay, maybe it's them. Maybe they have some stuff they're dealing with and need to heal from. A lot of times with narcissists, they see a reflection of themselves in you. They're saying that you're doing these things and these things, and they don't realize that they're the ones that are doing it.
Hmm.
And it's like they're looking into a mirror when they see you. And so I had to just learn how to deflect that and understand, like, that's not me. That's something that they're dealing with. But I definitely have been there more times than I can count. And that feeling is awful, but it's so important that we don't like put ourselves back or stoop down to their level, because this is what they're thinking. if we've done all that we can to self-improve and making sure that we're not coming across like that to people, then that's the best we can do. Now I've reached a point in my life, and again, years of practice all the time dealing with the same stuff over and over again, like you're just talking about. I've reached a point in my life now, I am so unapologetic, it's not even funny. Like the people who work with me now, the people who I surround myself by, I know they are ride or die because they're used to my straightforwardness. I am so blunt. It makes no sense. Like, cause I'm not going to change completely the way that I speak and who I am. Now that I've found who I am, now that I know who that person is, this is who I am. And you either love it or leave it, take it or leave it. Like pick one, pick a side. And at the end of the day, I have to not care which side they pick to an extent. I have to not be with that, because if the people who are for me, you have to understand, like, especially if you're a believer, like I serve a God bigger than all of us, myself included. So, nobody can compete with him. If I'm arrogant about anything, it's him. So if you got a problem with me or you feel like I'm arrogant, you talk to him about it, because I ain't got nothing to do with that. I'm not arrogant. I'm not that. So once you know who you are and you're confident in that, it's just a whole shift takes place, and you can't nobody convince you otherwise. So you stand on what you know, and you don't let anybody tell you otherwise.
And that's that whole thing about everybody's not your assignment,
Right.
So they need to find their other. But even in that, we didn't take the time to tell us about what you're doing and how this all came about, and how you got this confidence and everything, and what are you doing with this new confidence that you have?
Yes. So, so back to what I was mentioning earlier, that I am an actress and entertainer. I've been doing that pretty much my whole life. Went full time in 2004, and so I have found a balance between my passion and my calling to help other people to heal from and overcome trauma, whether that's homelessness, abuse, human trafficking, domestic violence, you name it. I have been through so much in my life that now, looking back on it, I understand that it was all for a purpose and a reason. And so I'm able to use my testimony to help others to heal. So I'm now a published author. I have a book, I Am a Poetic Ensemble, that I travel the world with. I speak on the topics in here. It's all poetry, memoir, story of my life. But it's all about those topics of things that I've experienced. And it's kind of, it's also a self-help book. It's kind of the blueprint to, if I could have given my younger self a blueprint, it would be this book, to help me understand some of the things that I'm dealing with, that I had to learn and study and work for years to get to this point to understand. And now I'm able to put it in a book, put it into a show. I use all of my shows, whether that's movie, stage productions, all of them are used to relay this message of healing in one way or another. So to be able to travel the world now and communicate this with people, and through what I'm naturally gifted at, that confidence continues to build, seeing people's lives that are changed. That's what does it most for me. That's what keeps me going on days like today where I'm exhausted. Some people know me, like my energy is not as as it normally is, and I'm trying my best right now, but I'm exhausted.
A great job.
It just keeps me going to know that there are people who need you just to show up, even if you have to show up wore out, eyes hanging low, feel like right now, you just show up. And so to hear people's testimonials and feedback of people that are inspired and moved by my story, that's what keeps me going, and that's what is driving my passion. And it's so important. Like, we all have a story to tell. We all have a gift, a purpose. Like, whether we figured out what that is yet or not is the only question. But we all have something in us. God put us on this earth for a reason. And so figure out what that is, and you just start walking in that. I'm doing it. I got a whole production company, S3 Productions. I just hired 20 new people over this past weekend. Another reason why I'm so exhausted. Training people and everything. It's just a lot going on. But it's the energy is coming from a place that I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. So even if I have to have my moments and just take a break or whatever I need to do, to keep my human flesh going along with the spiritual assignment that is in me, that's what I'll be done. So yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that is awesome. So you talking about keeping yourself going. how do you do your self-care? What does self-care look like in all of this you have to do? I have you taken it. I will remind you, use your self-care in there.
Well, I have an assistant who reminds me to do things like eat, like take a nap, like stuff, I literally have an assistant for that at this point. But no, it's not easy. Like I do fail in that area sometimes, and that's something that I'm consistently working on. I'm not perfect at that part yet. And I can tell when I'm starting to get burned out, then I just have to be self-aware. And when I start to feel myself getting burned out, I have to say, okay, let's pause on the interviews. Let's pause on, everything for a moment. I need to take a minute. And so my minute is usually going out into the woods camping. I know that ain't for everybody, but that's how I roll. Okay, I will pitch a tent, pack a backpack, and hike up into somewhere and just find a place and camp with the bears, like with my crazy butt. But that's what I do. So that's probably the biggest thing that helps me. And I can tell usually after every major show that I do, I'll go camping. So that's my thing. And then I didn't get to go camping after the last show. So I'm long overdue and going through withdrawal at this point. So I need to go camping definitely after this next show in Atlanta. So that's a big one for me. But then I also would suggest things like working out. Like I think staying on a good workout regimen and eating right was very difficult for me. But when I do remain consistent with it, it helps so much. Like it changes the whole course of my day. If I can get up early before anybody else wakes up, that's one that I do manage to do every single day. I gotta get up early before life begins and just have my moment. Sometimes that's trying to fit in a workout. Sometimes that's just drinking some tea and making a list of what needs to be done there, or, just spending some time with God, praying, whatever I got to do before life starts coming at me. Homeschool begins and all of this stuff is happening. I got to have those moments ahead of time. But the most important thing is just knowing that you need it. If anybody can relate to being superwoman, it is me. So I know there are a lot of superwomen and supermen out there probably watching this that can relate. Just understand that even though you do put on your cape every single day, and that is great, you are still in the flesh. You are still a human being. You have to take care of your human body so that you can continue to take care of other people. You have to put that mask on yourself first. So whatever that means for you, find it and do it consistently and keep it written down so you don't forget. And when you find that you're getting burned out and you're neglecting yourself, you go back to that list and say, which one of these things can I do for myself right now? And just be really intent about it.
I wanted to add, did you have any mentors along the way? How important was having a mentor or someone you modeled? How you wanted to take this path after?
I'm just now getting to the point where I'm starting to have mentors in real life. I think prior to this year, for real, I think that's why things are elevating so quickly now too, because I'm starting to connect with more people that I'd consider mentors. But prior to this, my mentors were people that I hadn't met, or some that I had met, but they just weren't available to me all the time. So like Tyler Perry and Beyonce and things like that. It's like these were my mentors without them even knowing, because I saw the purpose of where I was going and how up there that level is that I'm headed to. And so just to have somebody that's on the level headed in that direction, I had to think high. And I wasn't surrounded by people that were on the level that I'm going to. I was surrounded by people that were holding me back and that were comfortable at this stagnant level, right? So I had to really take stock of my surroundings and who I was around this year, and not just, look up to people on TV anymore or people that, that are out of my reach in some cases. And I had to start to connect with people that were within my reach, that were still up there. And in doing that, they connect me with other people in that reach as well. So just always aiming higher. And as I get higher up on whatever you consider the level of success, then I will continue to connect with even more influential people, and those become my mentors. So yeah, I think it's so important. I love that some people can find that person that they talk to all the time, but that's not always possible, especially when you travel full time, you're all over the place. But definitely have someone in mind, even if you hadn't met them yet, that this is what I aspire to be. Watch their interviews, see what, motivates them, and use that as motivation for yourself as well.
Yeah, and even like you said, reach down with the network to help somebody else up. And
Mhm.
I see you've had an incredible journey taking control of your own narrative and acting career and even your nonprofit work. But I'm
Mhm.
curious to know, what's your secret to having or staying in the driver's seat of your own life?
Hmm. um, oh, my answer to that is that I don't really feel like I'm in the driver's seat. I let Jesus take the wheel, honey, because that's the
Yeah,
only way I can answer that question. I'd be like, oh, Jesus, take the wheel.
that
Because,
is the answer. Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I can't even answer that question any other way, honestly. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that before. Yeah, like I said, I think about today where it was like before I even get on this call, I had to pull it together, I had to drink some water, I had to breathe, I had to take, I had to say, Jesus, take the wheel, because I have no control over all this. And it can get like that sometimes. I'm going through a transition right now where things are elevating very quickly in a great way. I'm excited about it. I wouldn't take it back for the world, but it's also overwhelming because it's a lot for me and it's all coming at one time. So I just have to really understand that God is driving all of this and
Mhm.
just let him handle it. Sometimes I just got to step back and be like, you know what, this is too big for me. Because
Mhm.
because if I continue to stay with my hands on the wheel trying to steer this car in the direction I want it to go, I'm gonna wreck. Like I'm just gonna wreck it all. I'm just saying that. so,
Yeah.
so hopefully that answered your question. I know it's probably not the answer you
I
expected, but that's what
that's the turn on the question, but I'm meaning like letting somebody else write your own story, like giving
right.
them license again. That's what I was talking about. But you are completely true. Him writing a story. But
Yeah.
some people try to take that pen from God and
Yeah.
try to
Don't do that. Don't do that.
yeah, so that's what but that was a great answer that you were saying. Yeah. I was thinking of like, being resilient and
Right. Right.
challenges of life. But yeah,
Mhm.
letting God write it, that's the ultimate
Yeah.
plan. That's the best best
Right.
penmanship.
Exactly. Just trust the process, let him lead, and
Yeah.
then trust your ability to follow him, because that's where you can throw in trusting yourself on your own journey, is like not letting all these other influences. If he's the only real influence, all these other influences, you can give or take some feedback that you might get, and then okay, that was good, but no, I'm not keeping that part, that I don't receive that, pick and choose. But ultimately knowing that he has the final say, and being like, okay, God, what you say about this? Because
Mhm,
we're
mhm.
saying, like, you just got to know that it's always up to you to choose which direction. God gives us free will. We don't have to choose him.
Right. Mhm.
So it's ultimately up to you to choose which way to go.
Yeah, because people will try to hijack your story. Yeah, and it's very important you reclaim it.
Right.
Um, so how do you stay motivated?
My motivation, like I said, it comes from just seeing the results,
Hmm.
and then also practicing that self-care when I make myself remember to, making sure I do my self-care, and keeping my mind right. But then just seeing the results. Like, we have had people that have come to shows or seminars and things like that, that were literally on the verge of taking their own life. And just
Oh,
hearing those stories right there just get me every time. Like, and Lord knows when to send the testimonies to me, because he knows when I'm about ready to, okay,
yeah.
I need a vacation. Like, I can't do this no more, like, or something. Because that's when the stories will start to come out, like, hey, I heard you on this podcast, or I heard you, saw you at this event, or whatever, and they're giving me the feedback that shifted their whole direction. And it's like, dang, I gotta keep showing up. I gotta keep showing
Mhm.
up. So that's really what motivates me to keep going.
Okay. So what's the goal from here? What's the next goal? Where are you working to get toward now?
So right now, as I mentioned, we're taking things to the next level with Us Three Productions.
Mhm.
I am delegating. I'm learning how to delegate. That's a very difficult thing for me, being someone who has always been the one doing everything. Um,
Mhm.
so I just brought on about 20, more than 20 actually, new team members, and I'm training them to do all of what I've been doing with the books and the tickets and the shows and all of the stuff, marketing, and just there's so many aspects to this that I've had been handling myself for so long. And so now my small team of people has turned into a huge team of people, and we are going out into various states and cities beyond, far beyond Atlanta, and now even worldwide. I just hired on someone from that's in Costa Rica, so
Wow.
that's really exciting. And so we're expanding everything that I've been doing. I'm going to continue to do that, but just taking it to the next level, putting myself in a position where I'm able to produce more because I'm not doing so much of the legwork, I guess, so that I can produce more. And so there's so many projects coming. I've written way more than I've published already, because it's just impossible to get it all done. You know, it's exciting, the transition that's taking place, but I'm ready to start producing more and focusing on that aspect of it.
So when did you realize, look, God, okay, now it's time. I accept it. It's time to, I can delegate. I can relinquish some of this to somebody else.
Oh man, I don't think there was a specific moment because it's this all of it's a process. Like everything you working through is a process. And for me, delegating has been a process. I'm still working on trusting people with my baby. Like this is my baby, right? So just working on trusting them and giving them a chance to fail because not everyone's gonna fail, but some of them might. And so just giving them a chance to do that. A little bit at a time. It's still a process that I'm going through now. So there wasn't any moment that I realized it, but I definitely realized a long time ago that I needed the help and that I couldn't do all this myself. And that's where the mentors play a part because you understand that even though Tyler Perry's the face of Tyler Perry Studios, he's not the only one doing, like there's no way in the world he could do all of this by himself. It takes this whole team of people that you may or may not ever see that are making the wheels turn. So I understood that from my mentor to understand that that's what needs to eventually be done. And so now it's just become too heavy for me. There's so much to handle that I'm like, okay, I got to do this now. I got to do it now before I lose my mind and quit. So I'm not going to quit. So it's holding me accountable. We're making it happen.
The lady needs her production crew.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. So as we wrap it up, I hope everyone's listening at this point and taking notes and what Vitelle has been saying about being the main character in your life. And it isn't about being selfish or ignoring others. It's about knowing or owning your own story and making the choices that reflect your true self. So, Vitelle, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your insight.
Thank you
Um,
for having me.
you're welcome. And is there anything else you want to share with the audience or any message that you want to emphasize or something that you like to share in general?
I just want to encourage everyone listening that no matter what you're going through, understand that storms never last forever. Just like a cold, you might be sick at a moment in time and it might feel miserable and like it's never going to end, but keep nurturing yourself, keep doing what you know you're supposed to do to get yourself back healthy. And eventually that cold will be over. And it's the same thing when it comes to life and anything that might be going on in your life right now. It will be over eventually. Just figure out ways to grow through it and get to the other side of it.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us today. You guys, you've been listening to Shape Your Truth podcast with me, Dr. Kamika, and our lovely special guest today, Vitelle. Please remember to check out her new show that she's doing in Atlanta area. We will have all the information in the show notes, and pick up her book. We will have a link in the show notes for you. And if you like to follow her, we'll have her information for you in the show notes. It's been wonderful having you with me. I hope you can come back again and we talk again. Uh, Everyone else out there, take this information in. Be yourself. Be the main character in your life. You can do it. And don't let anyone else hold you back. All right. That's all for us today. Thank you so much, Shape Your Truth Podcast. Go be great.